Hi, my name is Nick, and welcome to Nick's Picks Watch Reviews, the YouTube channel where we look at watches that I would pick, I might pick, or I have picked. And today we're going to be featuring a watch that I've picked, the Oris Big Crown ProPilot Timer GMT. And yes, that is a mouthful, and yes, they did basically cram every complication into its name, but it is a wonderful watch for travel. And in fact, that's the story of this watch for me. I bought this watch as a low-cost travel watch where, you know, it's a GMT. It has a timing bezel, so I'm not having to give that up. But it's also not breaking the bank at, you know, over $10,000 or something ridiculous as I'm traveling all over the world internationally. I've actually had this as my companion on trips over to Dublin, Ireland, over to various cities over in Israel, over to various cities over in India, and of course here at home. And it has been my trusty travel companion, even though it's at a huge size. You'll notice the case size is 44 millimeters. It's a big boy, but it does have a case thickness or thinness that is quite versatile. So let's go ahead and dig into the specifications, and then we'll look at some other interesting tidbits about this one. All right, so specifications for the Oris Big Crown ProPilot Timer GMT. This is reference number 017487756406407322202 LC. Now, technically it should be 05 LC as pictured here, given it has a different strap that I actually borrowed from another Oris, the Big Crown ProPilot Big Date. This strap is a grayish blue, but originally this specific watch came on a green strap, and the green strap was overwhelming, and so I decided to change it out for blue, or grayish blue, so that it would feel like a blue watch, even though it has a black dial. Now, it is my largest watch that I have in terms of diameter at 44 millimeters, and it is a big boy. It's fairly large. It has a 51.9 millimeter lug to lug, but in terms of the thickness, it kind of makes up for the other large dimensions in its thickness. It's actually fairly thin for how big it is otherwise, at only 12.9 millimeters thin or thick, or however you will. Now, the strap is actually a 22 mil strap. So the lug width is 22 millimeters there, which is kind of an annoying size to try to find, but Oris does make a bunch of other watches in the Big Crown ProPilot line that have a variety of straps that you can easily buy and swap out. It is a stainless steel case with a stainless steel case back, except the case back is a display case back with mineral glass. Yes, you heard that right. Even though it has a sapphire crystal on the case back, it is a mineral glass case back, and that's actually led to some damage in my case. The sapphire crystal is holding up fantastically, but the mineral glass on the back does have some pain and suffering involved in it, and you can see that very evidently as you look at it. In terms of the movement, it's powered by an Oris 748, or really it's a Sellita SW220-1, which adds that beautiful GMT complication alongside a date, in this case exposed with a date window at the 3 o'clock. It is a self-winding movement with a power reserve of 38 hours and a high beat frequency of 28,800 vibrations per hour. For water resistance, it has a screw-down crown, and it actually offers 10 bar or 100 meters equivalent of water resistance. Now, one of the quirky things about this watch is the clasp. Yes, that basically looks like a seatbelt on an airplane, and no, it's not. This is the clasp for the watch. It's a deployant clasp, and if you pull it up, as you see, it does in fact release, just as it says, and it clasps back together just the same. So very fun. It is a pilot watch. It kind of goes with that, and it pairs nicely with the strap, right? You get this canvas strap with this leather on the interior. Very well executed, looks very nice, and of course, it's just fun. All right, so in the name of this watch is GMT, and the GMT complication does take center stage here with that red hand. Now, to set the GMT complication, basically the crown has to be just past winding position. So initially it's in winding position. It is a screw-down crown, so when you unscrew it, it's ready to wind the watch. If you pull that out just one more stop, it's in the date and GMT hand setting position. To set the GMT hand, you roll the crown towards you. To set the date, you roll the crown away from you. So I'm going to go ahead and just roll the crown towards me. And you can see that the GMT hand moves, and it does jump and stick to the hours. So it jumps 1 hour at a time, which is really convenient as you're changing time zones, but maybe not so convenient if you're dealing with certain time zones. So for example, right now, it's about 10:52-ish, and a half, p.m. Pacific time. And over in India, let's say in Hyderabad, it would actually be about 11:22. I don't know. It's basically like one of these half-hour offsets, right? So to set that, and say this is why I need a GMT complication in my life, is to do that quick math for me. I would want to set this so it's basically a little bit past that 11 and kind of lock it in there. But if I actually try to lock it in, because it does jump an hour at a time, it's going to jump back, right? So it jumps back to that 11. So it's trying to be convenient, but for certain time offsets, that's actually very inconvenient. And you kind of still have to do, okay, it's that plus a half an hour. And, you might have a mental breakdown there. And well, at least I do, trying to do the date time math on the fly like that. Now, typically, as I'm working in the Pacific time zone, I have, coworkers over in Dublin, coworkers over in India, sometimes over in Israel, sometimes, and trying to keep track of all of that becomes fairly difficult. But most often it's between Dublin and Pacific time. And so usually those go pretty easily together. You don't have one of these half-hour offsets. And so it does work out for me when I'm stateside. Now, one of the other complications to point out is that timing bezel. Usually when you have a GMT complication, the bezel, if it moves, is going to reflect different time zones. But in this case, you can kind of see it's a timing bezel. It's trying to time things still, so you don't have to sacrifice a timing bezel if you use that complication by getting this GMT watch. Now, this is a bidirectional timing bezel. You can see that I can move it either counterclockwise or clockwise, and it's just as happy to do either. It does have a really firm turn, and it does click in really well. So you're not going to accidentally, hit it and knock it off of track. It's going to be right and snapped in. And if we look at the number of stops that it has here between, let's say, the 12 o'clock and the 1 o'clock, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which tells us that this is a 120 click bidirectional bezel. So very nice in terms of being able to very accurately represent, the exact minute, I almost said second, the exact minute that you started. So I really do like the timing bezel here. I appreciate the GMT complication. Maybe it's not exactly how I would want it implemented, but having both in the same watch is very nice to find. You don't always find that. So let's talk about the dial on this watch. I think that Oris did a fantastic job on the dial in terms of legibility. They chose a black base dial with white text, so you have really high contrast. They used a very legible font with very large font size, which they're able to do because they had 44 millimeters of diameter to work with. And then they gave it amazing lume, right? So you look at the lume, it has staying power, it has brightness, it's my favorite color. So all of that works well. And especially as you're thinking about how this might be worn. Yes, you might be wearing it in some other city somewhere across the planet, but you're also pulling this out on the plane, or rather not pulling it out. You can just look at your wrist and know what time it is. And that's kind of the beauty of watches while traveling. I don't have to dig for my cell phone. I don't have to turn it on and waste battery. I don't have to turn it on when the plane is dark and blind myself and wait for myself to readjust. I can just quickly check the time. Now, one of my hesitations was about the symmetry on the dial. The dial, while it is beautiful, while the applied indices are very deep and they're full of lume and it looks gorgeous, the second, some dial at the 9 o'clock that breaks the symmetry. And I don't know. I was kind of torn on that at first. My wife still hates it, but I like that now. I feel like that works for this watch until it's like 9:46 p.m. and similar time in on the GMT hand, and everything is just colliding at that portion of the dial. That becomes a little bit overwhelming, but other than that, it basically works. All right, so that about wraps up my thoughts about the Oris Big Crown ProPilot Timer GMT. That's a mouthful. the quintessential travel watch, the travel watch that's going to fly under the radar, except for its giant 44 millimeter diameter. It will fly under the radar. It's not going to draw attention to itself. You're not going to be, targeted specifically for your watch, where you might be if you brought something like a Rolex GMT Master 2 Pepsi. They look at that. They're going to try to take that potentially. You might say, but I have insurance. I hear that a lot. I have insurance on my watch collection. Yeah, but let's not even get mugged. Let's try that. That would be great. Also, don't wear fake watches to not get mugged. That's stupid, because you still get mugged. You just lose a fake watch, and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm all beat up and in the hospital, but at least they didn't steal the real one. Come on, man. So we're not going to do that. How about just wear a watch that's a useful tool, that is not too much money, that's not going to draw attention, that's going to have all the functionality you need while traveling, and is going to be a good companion. This is one that will not leave my collection because I have so many memories with this. I've been all over the world with this, and it is my travel watch. And if you see me out and about, maybe not at a watch event, but just out and about while traveling, there's a good likelihood, if I've crossed time zones, that this is my companion on that journey with me. All right, so that's all for this week. We will see you next time on Nick's Picks Watch Reviews. Until then, take care. If you like this episode, please be sure to subscribe to both this channel and the About Time channel, give this video a like, and hit that notification bell to be notified about future episodes. All right, I'm going to get this straight to the half hour. Just gotta put your elbow into it. Ah, missed again.